searching for something. Please give me a minute. PHP strings. The topics that are covered in PHP strings are how strings are represented, printing strings, accessing individual characters and concatenation, cleaning strings, encoding and escaping, comparing strings, manipulating strings, regular expressions, and conditional expressions. String is one of the data types supported by PHP, and it can be called a stream of characters. String can be compared to a beaded necklace, where the beads are the characters and the clasps are the quotes that represents the ends and the beginnings of the string. The string variables can contain alphanumeric characters. Through strings, you can declare variables and assign string characters to it. You can capture words. Learning how strings work in PHP and how to manipulate them, we can make a very effective web pages and be a productive developer. Moving on to how we actually represent strings. Strings can be represented in 4 different ways. Using single quotes, it's the simplest way to represent strings. And as escape characters will not expand when used in single quoted strings. Next, double quoted strings. Unlike single quoted strings, double quoted strings in PHP are capable of processing special characters. And the examples given below are examples of single quoted strings and double quoted strings. The third way of representing strings is using HereDoc. The syntax of HereDoc is another way to delimit PHP strings. An identifier is given after the HereDoc operator, after which any text can be written as a new line is started in the body. And to close the syntax, the same identifier is given without any tab or space. You can easily put multi-line strings into your program with HereDoc. In HereDoc syntax, we must make sure that the closing identifier is not indented further than any lines in the body. Otherwise, a parsing error will occur. The fourth way of representing a string is NowDoc. NowDoc is very much similar to HereDoc. The syntax is similar to the HereDoc syntax with symbols, 3 greater than symbols, followed by an identifier enclosed in single quote. No parsing is done inside NowDoc, ideal for large blocks of text without the need of escaping. The only difference between HereDoc and NowDoc is that HereDoc performs string interpolation, which means evaluating a string literal that has 1 or more placeholders, and turns our variables into the string they represent, while NowDoc does not. Moving on to the escape sequences that are represented in strings. /n is replaced by a new line. /t is replaced by tab space. $$ is replaced by $sign. /quotes is replaced by double quotes. /r is replaced by carriage return. And double backslash is replaced with backslash, and /single quotes is replaced with single quotes. How do we print strings? Print strings uses 2 print functions, which is echo. It's a construct that lets you print many values at once. And the other print function is print, which prints 1 value. Moving on to the detailed explanation of echo. Echo is a language construct to put a string into the HTML of a PHP generated page. The use of echo can either be indented between 2 quotes, or it can be put in parentheses. Print is a statement used as an alternative to echo at many times to display the output. Print can be used with or without parentheses. Using print, we cannot pass multiple arguments. Print is slower than the echo statement. Here's an example of how echo and print are used. Printf is another way of formatting strings, which is a type specifier as in C. While as print_r and var_dump is usually the intelligently display that is passed and debugging respectively. Accessing individual characters. We can access individual characters by using the string length function that returns the number of characters in a string, which we will discuss later in string functions. For addressing individual characters, we can take a look at the example given. Suppose we define a string variable as hello. We use a for loop, which is given an identifier that has a length less than I. On printing the characters, we get each character in hello line by line, concatenating strings. The operator period or full stop is used to combine the two string values and returns it as a new string. For example, if we define a string hello and another string PHP to concatenate both the strings, $a.$b is given and the output concatenates both the defined strings. Moving on to cleaning strings. Two common problems with raw data are the presence of extraneous white spaces and incorrect capitalization. Sometimes we see a line of words which have uppercases and lower cases in inappropriate positions. Thus, they need to be cleaned. Removing white spaces. The trim function is used to remove white spaces in strings. Trim returns a copy of string with white space removed from the beginning and the end. Ltrim, which means the left trim, does the same, but removes white spaces only from the start of the string. Rtrim, which means right trim, removes white spaces, but from the end of the string. Changing cases in strings. PHP has several functions for changing the case of strings. String to lower and string to upper operate on entire string. UC first operates only on the first character of the string, and UC words operate on the first character of each word in the string. Each function takes a string to operate on as an argument and returns a copy of the string appropriately changed. An example of how we change the cases of strings is given in the slide. In using string to lower, we see that the first string, Fred, which was initially defined as an uppercase word, is given as a lowercase word in the output. And when we use string to upper, the string changes into an uppercase word. And then you see the first letter in the string changes to an uppercase letter. And you see the words in the first character of each word in the string change into uppercase letters. Moving on to encoding and escaping. PHP programs often interact with HTML pages and web addresses and databases. And their functions are to help you work with those types of data. HTML, web pages, addresses, and database commands are all strings, but they each require different characters to be escaped in different ways. For instance, a space in a web address must be written as %20, while a literal less than sign in HTML document must be written in as %LT. PHP has a number of built-in functions to convert to and from these encoding. Moving on to the detailed explanation of how it is done in HTML. In HTML, the HTML entities function is an inbuilt function in PHP that is used to transform all characters which are applicable to the HTML entities. This is the syntax of how HTML entities are defined. First, we give an input and then the port style and then the character set is followed. The charset parameter, if given, identifies the character set. The quote_style parameter controls whether single and double quotes are turned into their entity forms. The HTML special cars function converts the smallest set of entities possible to generate valid HTML. The following entities are converted as: ampersand is converted to %amp. Double quotes are converted to and quote. Single quotes are converted to and #039 with a semicolon. Less than signs are converted to and LT. Greater than signs are converted to and GT. It also takes 3 arguments in the syntax, which is input, followed by quote style and char set, which are enclosed in brackets, square brackets. The quote underscore style and char set arguments have the same meaning that they do for HTML entities. How do we remove these HTML tags if we don't need them? We use the function strip underscore tags, which removes HTML tags from a string. As given in the example there, we give an input which has HTML tags of para tags. In the output, if we use strip underscore tags, it removes the para tags in it. Moving on to URL, PHP provides functions to convert to and from URL encoding, which allows you to build and decode URLs. To encode a string according to the URL conventions, we need to use raw URL encode function. $output is equal to raw URL encode enclosed in parentheses is the syntax for URL encoding. Here's an example of URL encoding. How is SQL used in PHP encoding? Most database systems require the string literals in your SQL queries to be escaped. SQL's encoding scheme is pretty simple. It just uses single quotes, double quotes, null bytes, and backslashes that need to be preceded by a backslash. The add slashes functions adds the slashes, and strip slashes function removes the slashes. Here's an example of how the slashes are removed and how we use SQL encoding. C string encoding. Call add C slashes with 2 arguments. The string to encode and the characters to escape is what the function of that argument is. The syntax of C string encoding is add C slash followed by string and char set enclosed in parentheses. Strip C slashes is used to return a copy with the escapes expanded. Here's the syntax of strip C slashes. Comparing strings. Comparing strings is very important when it comes to PHP strings. Comparing 2 strings for equality can be done by using the double equals to and triple equals to operators. The double equals to operator casts non-string operands to strings, so it reports that 3 and 3 are equal, whereas the triple equal to operator does not cast and returns a Boolean expression such as false or true if the data types of the arguments differ. Here's an example of how comparing strings is done. To explicitly compare 2 strings as strings, casting numbers to strings if necessary, we use the string compare function, which is strcomp. The syntax is you define a variable and which is equal to strcmp, which compares 2 named strings. Here's an example of how strings are compared. And the function there returns a number less than 0 if the string 1 sorts before string 2, greater than 0 if string 2 sorts before string 1, or 0 if they are the same. Manipulation of strings. PHP has many functions to work with strings. When you manipulate string, you usually manipulate the substrings of a string. So the functions that are used in some strings are substring function returns a part of the string required, where the syntax is a variable is defined with where substring followed by the string that needs where the substring is taken from. The start part of the string and the length of the string is mentioned in the syntax. Substring replace function permits string modification. Suppose we want to replace a specific part of a substring, we use the substring function where the original string is replaced. Here's an example of how substring is used. Other string functions include string reverse, which reverses the string, As you can see in the example, hello world is reversed. String position function, which searches for a specific text within a string. If a match is found, the function returns the character position of the first match. If no match is found, it will return false. As you can see in the example, hello world, world is in the 6th position. String length function returns the length of the string. PHP strings has a length of 11, so the output is given as 11. String word count function counts the number of words in a string. If we take an example of PHP strings, PHP and strings are two different words, so it returns the value of 2. String replace, the function replaces some characters with some other characters in a string. In the example, we can see that we want to replace the word world with dolly. So hello world becomes hello dolly. String to lower function returns string in lowercase letters. In the example, we can see that we passed a string called PHP strings. If we use string to lower, PHP strings will be written in lower cases. The same with uppercase. Moving on to regular expressions. When a more complex searching functionality than the previous methods discussed is needed, then regular expressions are used. A regular expression is a string that represents a pattern, and its functionality is to compare the pattern to another string and see if any other string matches the pattern. To find a match or make changes to the string. The uses of regular expressions are matching and extracting data from strings, substituting new text for matching text, and splitting a string into an array of smaller chunks. Usually, regular expressions are used as literal characters, meaning they match only themselves. Suppose we take an example of searching the word cow, which has character COW. This search can match to Dave was a coward because the expression has the match cow in it. You do not specify what exactly you want. So if you want a more specific search, we can use special characters like caret symbol, which is used in the beginning of an array, indicating that it must match the beginning of the string. Suppose we take an example, same example of cow, and you put a caret symbol in front of C. Then if you give an input of Dave was a coward, it returns false because we specified that we want cow to be in the beginning of the input. Whereas if we take the example of Kawabanga, it will return true because cow is the initial part of the string. Dollar, it is used in the end of the regular expression, means that it must match the end of the string. If you want a search for a string which ends with the word cow, then you use cow followed by a dollar. For example, you can take the input don't have a cow, then that will return true because cow is the last word in the string. Period or full stop used in regular expressions to match any single character in the string. We take an example of C.T and you give an input of CT, then it will return true. But if you give an input of bat, it will return false because you specified that there should be a C and a T in the expression. The real power of regular expressions is the ability to specify abstract patterns that can match many different character sequences. The types of abstract patterns can include a set of acceptable patterns that can appear in the string. In this, it allows us to build your own character class by enclosing the characters which we want in our expression in square brackets, or we can use a predefined one. Suppose if we use a caret symbol in those specified characters, it implies that we do not want those characters in our expression or abstract pattern. Same way, the range of characters can be defined by using a hyphen symbol. If we take an example of matching a regular expression, which starts with C and ends with T and needs to have vowels in between C and T, if we take an expression, I cut my hand, that will return true because cut starts with C and ends with T and has U in the middle because it returns true because U is a vowel. Whereas if we take what chipped, it certainly does start with C and end with T, but in the middle we do not have vowels. That is why it returns false. Another type of abstract pattern is set of alternatives for the string. We can define an alternative by using a vertical pipe. For example, if we take cat/dog and give inputs, the cat rubbed my legs or the dog rubbed my legs, it will return true because it has both the alternatives. Whereas if we give an input, the rabbit rubbed my legs, it will return false. Next abstract pattern includes repeating sequences in a string. To specify a repeating pattern, you use something called a quantifier. The quantifier goes after the pattern that's repeated and says how many times to repeat that pattern. For example, we can, if we look at the examples of quantifiers, question mark means 0 or 1, star means 0 or more, plus means 1 or more, curly bracket in n enclosed in curly brackets means exactly n times. N and m enclosed in curly brackets means at least n times and no more than m times. And n comma enclosed in curly brackets means at least n times. These can be used in combinations. For example, if I take a string input of a regular expression of CA plus T, plus means more than one A should be there. So if I give an input C followed by 6 A's and ended with T, it will return true because there are more than one number of A's. Whereas for the same cat, which has 6 A's in between, if I give a regular expression of CA question mark T, then it will return false because question mark means 0 or more number of characters. Other patterns that can be used are sub patterns. You can use parentheses to group bits of regular expressions together to be treated as a single unit called a sub pattern. For example, if you want to return a string called it was a very, very big dog, then you put very in parentheses and put plus on the outside of the parentheses. Delimiters. In delimiters, we use parentheses, curly brackets, square brackets, and angular brackets in patterns so that it returns what is needed. Like it's more specific. For example, if you want to give a location of a user file, we use delimiters. And more other character class functions can be something like colons followed by something and then another colon. We use this when we want to specify like a specific alpha number or an ASCII variable or punctuation or an upper or lower class variable. Anchors. An anchor limits a match to a particular location in the string, which is caret dollar greater than symbol between two semicolons, and the other examples given in the table. Generally, regular expressions are typical very greedy in nature because sometimes when we specify something in the engine matches as much as it can. Well, it still satisfies the rest of the pattern due to backtracking. Sometimes the specific nature of the regular expressions is lost and it keeps on backtracking. This can be a problem. Thus, we need minimal matching. Thus, in order to make it less greedy, we use non-greedy quantifiers, which is nothing but putting a star, and which is nothing but putting a question mark followed by a greedy quantifier. Non-capturing groups is when we create a sub pattern, but not necessarily capturing the matching text. Back reference is you can refer to a text captured earlier in a pattern with a back reference such as /1, which refers to the contents in the first sub pattern, and /2 refers to the contents in the second pattern, and so on. Trailing options. Trailing options modifies interpretation or behavior of match. More than one option in single pattern can be used. For example, we take a regular expression followed by I or S or U or X or M or E, which can be used to make text case sensitive or make a match, or reverse the greediness, remove white spaces, make a caret, or use a dollars match. Inline options. To specifying pattern-wide options after closing pattern delimiters, you can specify options within a pattern to have them apply only to the part of the pattern. In this case, we use flags, that can specify that pattern, and nothing else is given in the output. Look ahead and look behind. Look ahead and look behind, check if there's more data that is behind or preceding the text respectively. There are two types in look ahead and look behind, which is of positive syntax and negative syntax. Moving on to conditional expressions. A conditional expression is like an if statement in a regular expression. The general form of conditional expression is given like this. Suppose we are given a condition, and if that condition is true, the yes pattern is printed. If the condition is not true, the no pattern is printed. Assertion can be back reference or look ahead or look behind matched. Condition is used only if back reference is matched, otherwise positive or negative look behind or look ahead is used. The functions used in ARIA are, there are 5 classes of functions that work with regular expressions, which are, for matching, we use preg underscore match. For replacing, we use preg underscore replace. For splitting, we use preg underscore split. For filtering, we use preg underscore grep. And the other function of ARI is in utility. Most of the commonly asked questions on strings in interviews are, how to repeat a string to a specific number of times in PHP. In PHP, the function string underscore repeat can be used to repeat string for n number of times. It creates new strings by replacing given string n number of times. Here's an example of repeating strings. How to get last character of a string in PHP. To find last character of string in PHP, we use substring and give the position of the substring as -1. List the commonly used string functions in PHP as mentioned previously. These are the following string functions. How to remove HTML tags. We can use strip underscore tags to remove HTML tags. How do we limit the string length in PHP? To limit the characters in PHP string, use the following code. We use an if statement, and the string length is, suppose we want a string that is less than 10 characters, then we give a condition, and the following string is given. The differences between print and echo. Echo has no return value, whereas print has a return value of 1. Hence, it can be used in expressions. Echo can work with multiple parameters, whereas print can work only with one argument at a time. Echo is a bit faster than print. How to get a string between 2 characters in PHP. A string between 2 characters in PHP can be extracted by the following code. Suppose we want to extract a string between equals to and the square bracket in the given example. The given variable defined is hello there, I am equal to testing. So you want the string between equals to and the ending square bracket, which is testing. So you define a variable which is equal to, and a variable 2 which is equal to the end bracket, then print the variables between from and to, and then define a function that uses this, that prints the substring and returns the string which we want. How to convert special characters to Unicode in PHP. There is a function called JSON_encode, which is used to convert special characters to Unicode. And here is an example of it. Here's a coding question that is used in interviews. Suppose we are given a string 082307 and we are asked to put semicolons colons in the form of a date syntax. We can easily just use the split_chunk split_ function, which is chunk_split, which allows us to split the given string in intervals of 2 and insert a colon in between the function. How to check for empty strings in PHP. String is said to be empty if it contains no characters. Thus, we can use the empty function. Here's a code example of that. Another interview question is, suppose if they ask you to remove the commas from a following numeric string, we can use the string replace function, which replaces the commas in a numeric function. How we use regular expressions in PHP. Regular expressions in PHP are used to remove characters from strings, to validate usernames, to create YouTube thumbnails, replace URLs with its domain name, and create link, add missing alt tags to images, censor words with regexpression, telephone number validation, replace links with an href, email validation using regex, highlight words, and add HTTP to URL.